going to be about the theme, kind of bringing these songs together, is winter birds. And we've got all the songs here listed. But like I said, if you have any particular things or something comes up, we can always substitute stuff in or bring other things in. But we've got the songs of winter, a selection celebrating and exploring the darkest season and the melodies and themes inspired by the cold, frost, and the wind. So we've got tonight Winter Birds, the Wren Song, and Cwrw Cwrw, which is a carol. Both songs, actually, we have versions from the Clancy Brothers, so you can check those out in the recommended sort of notable rendition section. Then we've got a few songs, the frost, the cold blow in the rainy night, the month of January, of Holly She Bears a Berry. So a few different types of songs here, and hopefully there'll be enough in there that you can take one or two or three, maybe that'll sit with you depending on how you're feeling. They're all quite different in mood, so they're not all cold and dark. Some of them are quite hopeful, some of them are quite joyous. So tonight, I'm going to get started on two songs, the Wren Song and Cwrw Cwrw. Now these are looking at a few different types of birds. We've got the wren and the red robin, but there's a few other types of birds in here as well. So firstly, usually what I like to do is start with a warm-up. So before we start the Wren Song, we're going to get out of our bodies. We're going to get into our voice. So I'd like you to maybe mute yourself and just copy me for the next 5-10 minutes. This is what we're going to do every single week, just to get ourselves into our voice. We're maybe not used to warming up our voice, even though we're probably on Zoom majority of the day. And the most important thing we need to think about is our posture and what we're doing with our voice, as well as hydration. I've just finished my water. But in general, when we're sitting in front of a computer, those are the three things we want to think about. Hydration, are we drinking enough water? Are we sitting appropriately? And then how is our voice activating? Because it can feel very silent. You know, you can feel very silent when you're on a lot of big calls and you don't really get this connection with people. So what we're going to do in all these classes is really just open up the voice. So we're going to start just by feeling our body and getting to know where any tension is. Okay, so this is rolling the shoulders forward and back. I'm just going to keep talking, but you can just do as I'm doing and shake them out. Let's breathe in, stretch up, and stretch out to the side. All the way down, all the way down. And breathe in again. Big smile, and this time out on a shh. And the last one, up. Shake, 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 shake. So the reason why we're engaging our breath here, the sh and these three sounds, sh, they're engaging our breath, our lungs, but they're also working our muscles down here. So we're going to warm those up now after a little bit more breathing. So let's breathe in for 4 and then out for 4 on a hiss. Here we go. Breathe in and hiss for 4. Breathe in for 4. Hiss for 6. Breathe in for 4. Hiss for 8. In for 4. And hush for 8 this time. Here we go. Shh. Keep going. 5, 6. Relax the shoulders and breathe in for 4. Hush for 10. Here we go. Shh. Keep going. All the way to the other end of the room. And breathe in for 4. F for 10. Breathe in. Let's go hiss for 16. Now go. Last one for 4. Hush for 16. Shake it out, let's vocalize. Shake out the head. We need to loosen up, exactly, Paul. We need to loosen up the tongue as well. The tongue is a really, really important muscle. Let's get it going around our mouth. And let's open up our face as we're doing it. Keep that going. Now go for slow-mo, just the tongue as if you're licking your gums, really slow motion. The reason we're doing this is to try and unlock, release any tension. It's like you're massaging your tongue, and we need our tongue for language. Obviously, the word language comes from the word for tongue, and you cannot speak, you cannot use diction without a really, really active tongue. Just shake it out again. Big smile. And open up. Close. Open up. And now your low part of your voice. And then you can do the same thing with your lips pursed. And let's go put the vocalization. And this is called the fish. Just stretching out the cheeks here and dropping the jaw. And get the tongue going again. And let's go for the horse. And the fish. And the horse. And just shake it all around. I'm starting to get a little bit of a vibration in my nose, which is good, which means it's starting to warm up, and sometimes in my ears as well. Let's use the hiss, shh, the hiss, hush, and the th, but let's vocalize them now. So as if we've got a chainsaw, we're going to start with a hiss, and then put voice behind it. Wind it up. Join in again. You can use your arm, activate it. Keep going as long as you can. Breathe out. Other side. And the last one. So you should feel a little bit of engagement down here in your muscles down your belly, and also I'm starting to feel more vibration up as I make those sounds, as I vocalize in the ears and in the lips. So we're always trying to relax, release tension in the face, and always starts with your shoulders. That's why we begin with the shoulders. Now, as you're sitting there, if you're sitting, can I ask you just to shake out your left ankle? And now you add your right hand, left ankle, right hand, and swap them. Now let's go for your left knee, right elbow. Shake them, shake them, shake them, and swap. And now just go on your hips, just swivel, swivel, bounce, 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 stretch up, bounce, bounce, bounce. And open up the head, up the mouth. And let's give a big yawn. Stretch out, open up your chest. Pumping the arms. And a big Tuesday evening hug. Here we go. Alright, you deserve it. You've really worked hard this week so far. And relax. Okay, now let's just think lastly about where our chest is. So you can see, some of us are very tempted to sit like this. So very looking forward and downwards on your screen. The most important part here is the chest, the sternum. So we want to lift the sternum. So watch, dropped, lift, drop, lift. Just copy me. Drop the sternum, lift. Relax the arms, shoulders, drop the sternum. Lift the sternum and relax the shoulders. Drop the sternum. Lift the sternum, relax the shoulders. Last time, collapse and gently come up. Now look at the position of my head. Imagine your spine is continuing up in a straight line. So you've got a little bit of buoyancy top of your head. Let's collapse again. Collapse. Now come up with your sternum and your head. Imagine your spine is going up to the ceiling and your shoulders relaxed. Good. And this is our position that we want to be in when we're singing, but also just generally when we're sitting, when we're interacting on Zoom, or even if you're in the classroom or if you're at work. This is how you want to check in, hold yourself, because this is how your voice works. And we all know when we're conversing, when we're presenting, when we're pitching, when we're singing, the voice needs to have a great resonance. It needs to lock into itself. It's a very physical instrument. It's actually us. It is physically us. So if we have a healthy voice, then we're going to have a healthy body. Okay? Good stuff. So we'll do a little bit more of those, but I encourage any part of those, any aspect of those, you can do them first thing in the morning, or even if you've got a call, do it before you have a call, or if you've got something else coming up, just a little bit of or just to activate and energize not only the mouth and the tongue, but also these muscles down here, and also thinking about your sternum and your shoulders, just relaxing everything. All right, so let's get back into it. The Wren song. So I'm gonna sing it for you to start with. So just give me a thumbs up. Have you heard of this one before? Yeah, Paul. Good. So this is about the Wren, the tradition on St. Stephen's Day, the 26th of December. We'll learn a little bit more about the history of it and the story, but I'll sing it for you now. I'll do it nice and slow. Usually the versions you hear are quite fast, it's kind of raucous, but it goes like this. The wren, the king of all birds, St. Stephen's Day was caught in the furze. Although he was little, his honour was great. Jump up, me lads, and give us a treat. Up with the kettle and down with the pan, and give us a penny to bury the wren. Drawling, drawling, where's your nest? It's in the bush that I love best. It's in the tree, the holly tree, where all the boys do folly me. We followed the wren 3 miles or more, 3 miles or more, 3 miles or more, through hedges and ditches and heaps of snow at 6 o'clock in the morning. Up with the kettle and down with the pan, and give us a penny to bury the wren. As I went out to hunt and all, I met a wren upon the wall. Up with me wattle and give him a fall, and brought him here to show you all. I have a little box under me arm, a tuppence a penny will do it no harm, for we the boys who came your way to bring in the wren on St. Stephen's Day. Up with the kettle and down with the pan, and give us a penny to bury the wren. So this song comes from a tradition which is very old, centuries old, according to recorded history, but very, very likely that it goes beyond that. And this is found not only in Ireland, but that was actually a very big, well-documented research done in the Manx tradition, so from the Isle of Man. And some of that, we're going to look at a little bit of folklore and mythology from the Isle of Man. But you can hear the melody, very repetitive. And just repeats and repeats, and there's a little bit of a chorus there. But this is one of those songs that there are loads of different versions of. So any 2 sessions you go to, any 2 singers, you might hear completely different versions, and that's why we've included some recordings in the sort of recommended listings. So Wren Day, this is something that is very old. It's not necessarily Irish, as I said, but it was a very, very big part of Irish tradition around Christmas. Set the 26th of December, which is why we have a mention of St. Stephen's Day, which is the day after Christmas. In the UK, it's called Boxing Day, but St. Stephen's Day. But even before St. Stephen's Day, it would be called La Androlling, or Wren Day. So, it's sort of the same thing, the same festival, but just different words and different ideas, different stories behind them. So the tradition is hunting a wren and putting on top of a pole. So it's almost like a sort of sacrifice, and you go around dressed up as a straw boy or a mummer. You might have seen pictures or photos or videos of these people. They dress up in big wicker hats and straw costumes, and they celebrate by dressing up and going around knocking on people's doors on the day after Christmas, looking for bits of money or bits of food from leftovers from Christmas dinner. Usually playing some music, things like sort of traditional instruments like whistles and bodhráns, and singing songs like this and telling this story. It's kind of like a trick or treat. It's actually, when you look at these festivals, the festival of Halloween or Samhain in Ireland and the festival of Landrolling, it's actually a really, really similar idea. Going to sort of collecting from people, going to their door to door, collecting either money or um, sort of little gifts and things. And it's all about building a community, and it's celebrating the time, celebrating the season. So these pagan festivals are still, these things are still celebrated in Ireland today, just a lot less. But you do still get mummers and straw boys going around in rural parts. Actually, down in Waterford and Wexford and stuff, it's actually probably the strongest down there.
Yeah, we used to do one. I didn't do it myself when we were kids, but we would have neighbours would have called over, played a bit of music, did the rounds. So
Were they dressed up? Did they have the mask?
yeah, more so tights and hats and balaclavas, but no, not really
So
the straw
really,
hats. I know
yeah,
I think
friendly
I've
neighbours.
seen Cork Kerry. I think they do a lot more of the straw hats, and I've seen it before. So yeah,
Yeah, and it's interesting. It's kind of the more modern. Actually, a lot of the photos you look at the Wren Boys, they actually just looks like Halloween. They're like dressed in sort of devils masks, sort of
yeah,
almost things you would get out of toy shops,
mm-hmm.
and they like balaclavas or like skeleton masks to cover up who they are, or like
Cover up.
hats or whatever.
Yeah,
So it is. There's a very big overlap between the dressing up, the characters that are used for Samhain and for Halloween are very similar to the Wren Boy characters. But this again is more of a Christmas, although it's completely pagan. It's not necessarily a religious festival. It's not a celebration of any religious traditions. This is quite a pagan tradition which has survived. And like I said, there's these songs that go down since the mid 1700s. They've been recorded, so it's very likely that versions of them were sort of in circulation before that. So we've got this is an interesting story. I think it's worth talking about because this will give us a little bit of an insight into one of the traditions, one of the stories behind. So I'll just read it out here. Many years ago, this is from Isle of Man, a researcher, a folklore collector on the Isle of Man. There came to the island a beautiful banshee. So the banshee, the she was the fairy people in the Irish language, and ban means woman, so woman of the fairy people, and that's where the banshee, the sort of English word comes from, the banshee, the sort of horror character. We can talk a little bit about the banshee, and she is a fascinating character. And actually, listened to a podcast very recently about the banshee. It's just amazing the wealth of tradition around this one character. She went all through the land, and wherever she appeared, she put such enchantment on the men by her beauty and her wonderful, attractive powers that they, one and all, left their work and their homes to follow her. When she had them all collected in this way, she led them across an apparently shallow ford in a wide river. She herself went across to the other side and ended up completely dry. But when her followers attempted the fording, the river rose in fury and drowned nearly all of them. The survivors, brought to their senses by the disaster, gave chase to the woman, seeking vengeance upon her. But she, laughing in mockery, changed herself into the shape of a wren and flew away. Some say that this particular wren was the first to be hunted, killed, and carried round for exhibition. Others believe that the fairy woman escaped altogether. It is generally believed to be in memory of this event that the wren is hunted and carried annually. Now, this is one version of the story, and it obviously has very strong mythological background and lineage, this type of story, but this is from the Isle of Man. There are stories, I'm sure, if you go down to Waterford and Wexford and then over to Kerry and then maybe up to Sligo and Mayo, they would have their own histories and traditions based on legends, probably, of people and stories that lived and really things that really happened. But just a little bit about the banshee. The banshee was traditionally believed until very recently, and there are still people who absolutely believe. There's the banshee there. That was my ukulele just fell. So I better not talk about the banshee too much. But she was believed to be a bringer of death. So you would hear the banshee, the scream of the banshee, and that would signal that someone in your community was about to die, usually a family member or someone that you know, a neighbour in these rural communities. But there are loads of other traditions about the fairy people and the woman of the fairy people. Now, she was a very strong character, usually a kind of queen figure in the other world. So she was a really powerful figure. So what does she represent in the Manx folklore and in the Irish folklore? Well, we've explored a little bit about who she was, but in the context of the wren, why did these supernatural women manifest as animals? Because we see it all across the folklore, all across the mythology. And it's interesting, this story, it's possibly the influence of the church and this idea of how the church interpreted feminine characters in mythology and how the ideas of the feminine, especially in Christian dogma, would put some kind of flaw or fault upon the female, on the feminine character, and someone that had to be, distrusted, or someone who had to be avoided, or we had to be, either she had to be protected or we had to be protected from her. And we see this across folklore, and it was very, very likely that there were a lot of religious influences on these folkloric stories. But if we compare this, I think it ties in with the Greek myth of Persephone, who was abducted by Hades to spend half the year in the underworld. So Persephone was a goddess of vegetation. She was a goddess of life, and she would bring flowers, and she would bring sort of richness to the land. So when she was down in the underworld, when she was trapped in the underworld by Hades, it would be winter. But when she was released, then spring would come and summer would come. But then inevitably every single year she would have to go down into the underworld, the Greek underworld, and then everything on the surface of the world would die. And then when she came back up again 6 months later, everything would start to live. So it's like her presence on earth brings everything to life. And then when she goes into the underworld. So this idea, this character Persephone, she was beautiful, and this is why Hades wanted to abduct her and take her down and keep her there. But she was also so beautiful and so powerful, and so she brought such power to the world, to Earth, that the whole of the world blossomed. So we've got this character Persephone that has a lineage in this idea of maybe the wren, and how the presence of the wren brings goodness, or maybe the absence of the wren brings death and is sacrifice. So the feminine offering of nature, or of flowers, or Persephone, or beauty, is presented as something which must be sacrificed in order to restore the natural balance. So we have this idea of the gods, the pagan gods, the offering and the balance. And this is often why these superstitious beliefs, they endured, because people believed we better give something for the wren boys, because if we don't, then something bad is going to happen to us. The banshee will come, or our crops will die, or we won't have a good harvest next year. And this was all tying into offerings to the gods. And the wren boys were perceived to be some kind of otherworldly presence. So when they came to your door, it wasn't just the lads from around the corner. They were bringing this tradition. They were bringing this story that tied in this world with the other world. And I suppose when you do that long enough, people believe it, or at least they celebrate it, or they accept it. So once you accept something like that, it's hard to get rid of it. It's hard to disbelieve it completely. But these are just a few theories. I mean, there's a wealth. You need a PhD to understand the wren boys' land rolling. But this is just to give us a little insight into the depth and the wealth of these ideas. There's a few things you can listen to, but let's go back now. I'm going to give you this as a PDF, but let's go back and see if we can start singing. So it's a very repetitive melody. So we were in E flat major, just in case anybody's interested. The wren, the king of all birds, since Stephen's day was caught in the furs. Although he was little, his honour was great. Jump up, me lads, and give us a treat. And that might have a rhyme. So you have these words that are kind of rhyming in the dialect. So you can say them whatever way you want, but it doesn't matter too much. But bear in mind that the words were written to have a rhyme. So let's go that what I just sang is repeated the whole way through. So let's do it line by line. You can sing along with me. I'll do it 4 times. The wren, the king of all birds. 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 Since Stephen's day was caught in the furs. 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 Let's do the first 2 lines together and go. The wren, the king of all birds, since Stephen's day was caught in the furs. Again. The wren, the king of all birds, since Stephen's day was caught in the furs. Good, and you feel there's a little bit of a pulse, a little bit of an accent. The wren, the king of all birds, since Stephen's day was caught in the furs. So words like saint and was and of all, they're kind of dropped a little bit. The wren, the king of all birds, since Stephen's day was caught in the furs. Although he was little, his honour was great. 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 And then the last line's a bit different. Jump up, me lads, and give us a treat. Jump up, me lads, and give us a treat. Jump up, me lads, and give us a treat. Jump up, me lads, and give us a treat. Let's go, the whole thing. And then once we've learned this, we can just go all the way through all the verses. So let's go first verse again. The wren, the king of all birds, since Stephen's day was caught in the furs. Although he was little, his honour was great. Jump up, me lads, and give us a treat. Alright, and then this little bit, it's kind of a recurring chorus. In lots of versions, it doesn't happen every time, but I think it's nice to get it as a little recurring, maybe every 2 or every, after the first one, then maybe every 2. But you can throw it in every time. These songs are over to you. Once you learn these, you can do whatever you like with them. That's the whole point of folklore, folk song. It doesn't belong to anyone. There's no perfect version because things change and that's how they grow, that's how they evolve. So you can sing this one whatever way you like. You can choose verses to sing, as with all these songs. So the little repetitive version is, up with the kettle and down with the pan, and give us a penny to bury the wren. And often what happens is we rhyme wren with pan. So that's often just the way it happens with the various. I think it's actually it's an old pronunciation, as in like an old English pronunciation of wren. So up with the kettle and down with the pan, and give us a penny to bury the wren. Again. Up with the kettle and down with the pan, and give us a penny to bury the wren. Last time. Up with the kettle and down with the pan, and give us a penny to bury the wren. Let's go, second verse. Starts with the word drawleen. 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 That's the wren. Let's go. 1, 2, 3, and drawleen, drawleen, where is your nest? It's in the bush that I love best. It's in the tree, the holly tree, where all the boys do folly me. And you notice that we go holly and folly. Holly tree, where all the boys do folly me. You can change it to follow if you like. Just sometimes a nice rhyme works. Next one, we follow the wren. We followed the wren 3 miles or more, 3 miles or more, 3 miles or more, through hedges and ditches and heaps of snow at 6 o'clock in the morning. Up with the kettle and down with the pan, and give us a penny to bury the wren. As I went out to hunt and all, I met a wren upon the wall. Up with me wattle and give him a fall, and brought him here to show you all. I have a little box under me arm, a 2 pence a penny will do it no harm, for we're the boys saint if you like. To bring in the rain on St. Stephen's, or to bring in the rain on Stephen's Day, whatever you prefer. Okay, will we do the whole thing? Sounding okay? Is that key okay? Is it a bit low or is it alright?
I think I'm finding it hard. The end of the second line I think is just marginally too low if I go down low. So I'm trying to sing above, but
cool. Let's change key. Let's bring it up just to experiment. So let's go into G major. The wren, the king of all birds, St. Stephen's Day was called. Okay, that's a bit better. Should be a bit easier. And yeah, again, this any key you like. This isn't. It's always to do with whatever key you start in, basically, and try to stay in that key. The wren, 1, 2, 3, go. The wren, the king of all birds, St. Stephen's Day was caught in the furs. Although he was little, his honour was great. Jump up, me lads, and give us a trade. Up with the kettle and down with the pan, and give us a penny to bury the rat. Drawling, where's your nest? It's in the bush that I love best. It's in the tree, the holly tree, where all the boys do follow me. We followed the wren 3 miles or more, 3 miles or more, 3 miles or more, through hedges and ditches and heaps of snow at 6 o'clock in the morning. Up with the kettle and down with the pan, and give us a penny to bury the rat. As I went out to hunt and all, I met a wren upon the wall. Upon me wattle and give him a fall, and broad I'm here to show you all. I have a little box under me arm, and tuppence a penny will do it no harm. For we are the boys who came your way, to bring in the wren on St. Stephen's Day. Up with the kettle and down with the pan, and give us a pen to bury the wren. So that tempo at the end. The wren, the king of all birds, St. Stephen's Day was caught in the fur. That's probably more like, the way it might be sung traditionally. Although he was little, his honour was great. Jump up, me lads, and give us a trade. Now, just a little tip on that. We always learn something slowly, because there's no point in rattling through it, because your tongue, your voice doesn't get a chance to get around it. So let's just do this with your tongue again. Check it out. Stretch out. So the more used to opening up our voice we are, the easier it'll be when we're singing, but also just when we're speaking, when we're on a Zoom call, when we're on a phone call. If you're used to opening up your voice, then when you start to speak, you'll have more. It's like stretching, before you run. It's like just being able to access part of it that you weren't able to access before. And remember, yawning is good. So let's all just another big yawn. Another big Tuesday yawn. Yawning is good because when we're warming up, it opens up the lungs and it gets us open, and it also vocalizes. Okay, good. So let's think about the rhythm. One of the key features of this, before we move on to the next song, is the rhythm and the meter and the pulse. So just listen to what I'm doing with my consonants, and you'll really hear the bounce in it, okay? So keep in G major, that's okay. The wren, the king of all birds, St. Stephen's Day was caught in the furs. Although he was little, his honour was great. Jump up, me lads, and give us a treat. Now, what that does a few things. It helps me get onto the rhythm. It helps me to phrase the song. But also, just practically speaking, if I'm listening to that and I'm across a room or if I'm outside, I'm going to hear the words more easily. It's better for diction. So the two things are rhythm and diction. So rhythm is more about the actual melody, like the music. The diction is about the words. So the reason why we can bounce off those consonants is twofold. One for melody and rhythm, and then the other for the text. So let's try that again. I want you to really emphasize. Let's go a bit slower. The wren, and I want you to open up these vowels. Let's just practice our 5 vowels. Ah, eh, e. There's a narrowest vowel. E. Oh, like an O with your lips. Oh, and then ooh, as if you're pulling spaghetti out of your mouth. Ooh, ah, hey. That's more like Fonzie. Hey, hey, e. It's like an alien or E.T. or something. E, and then you've got the oh, and then ooh. So the gestures will help. You don't have to do them every time you sing, but as you're warming up, ah, eh, e, as in really narrow, as if it's a very pointed e, oh, ooh. Good. Let's throw in all those 5 vowels and really bounce off all of the consonants. Here we go. 1, 2, big smile. The wren, the king of all birds, in Stephen's day was caught in the furze. Although he was little, his honour was great. Jump up, me lads, and give us a treat. Up with the kettle and down with the pan, and give us a penny to bury the ran. Breathe. Drawling, drawling, where's your nest? It's in the bush that I love best. It's in the tree, the holly tree, where all the boys do folly me. Now, just listen to what I'm doing with the tempo as well. Starting kind of slowly, building up and then slowing down. Starting slowly, building up and then slowing down. So listen to it again. We followed the wren 3 miles or more, 3 miles or more, 3 miles or more, through hedges and ditches and heaps of snow at 6 o'clock in the morning. Up with the kettle and down with the pan, and give us a penny to bury the ran. As I went out to hunt and all, I met a wren upon the wall. Up with me wattle and give him a fall, and brought him here to show you all. I have a little box under me arm, a tuppence or penny, you'll do it no harm, for we are the boys who came your way to bring in the hen on Stephen's Day. Up with the kettle and down with the pan, and give us a penny to bury the ran. Alright, you see that? So it's kind of the phrase moves forward, it builds, and all we're doing really, once we've got the consonants and the vowels nice and clear, we're just speeding up and slowing down. Very natural movement. And it's a nice little way to move that song along. And I think it helps to tell the story as well. Alright, so there's lots in there. Remember, you're going to get these PDFs. So you can listen to all these really brilliant versions. There's Clancy Brothers Alive, and there's a brilliant little story at the start as well, from 1963. Then we've got Lisa O'Neill, the most recent version there. And an alternative version, really nice, from the Chieftains, which is a bit different on the melody, but really worth listening to. Cool. So before we move on, we'll see if anyone has any thoughts on that one. So you know that one, Paul, right?
Yeah, so yeah, I would have known. Probably, yeah, I would have heard it a few times, but to hear the meaning and hear the, to go through it slowly and verse by verse to see the meaning of the, the story of finding the rain and catching the rain. I could really hear you, I suppose, Liam Clancy in my head when you were singing that. I could, from your tempo anyway. It was really, you could get his voice. From
it's a great version.
your version.
The Clancy version is really brilliant, and like for
that
instance,
tempo as well. And
she does hers a bit slower, and it's more about she exposes her vocal a bit more, and it has a different kind of feel. But again, that's the thing is, any person doing any of these songs, you can do whatever you want with it, and there's enough depth in them. There's so much richness in the songs over the hundreds of years they've been sung that you can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
I thought the melody really reminded me of Lord of the Dance. That hymn.
Yeah.
I wondered if it had that hymn had nicked the melody or something, because it's really, I think the verse is very similar.
Simple Gifts, isn't it? Simple Gifts. Lord of the Dance. What's it go like again? Simple Gifts.
Like I can't remember what the verse goes like. Yeah, it's exactly that one. What's the verse?
She danced in the dawn. She danced in the yeah, it is very, very similar.
Stars in the sun and came down the river and he danced on the earth. Bethlehem, I had my birth, or whatever that. It's a very similar rhythm, and it's quite similar, like the. It's not totally note for note the same, but it's got a similar kind of, I don't know.
And actually, interesting, in the song we're going to do now to finish off tonight, that's a carol, and we talk a little bit about how where these melodies came from, because these traditional songs, like the Wren song, it's unlikely that melody has been sung exactly like that for like 400 years. It's unlikely. But it's very likely that the story has been the same, and it's been like evolved and changed every generation. But for instance, the Simple Gifts, that melody probably came from folk song or a song that was already there that people already knew. And we've talked about this before in our introductory course. Where do the melodies for hymns come from? Often they do come from the popular tradition of folk songs usually, or songs that were written, in that century, and they just put religious words to it because people already know it. So they say, okay, well here's the scripture, here's the hymn text, so sing that melody to this. And that's how these songs come into life and they become really popular because people already knew them. So it's possible that the simple gifts came from something similar, maybe a similar place to this melody, or possibly it was vice versa. We don't know for sure, but there's always a back and forth, borrowing and stealing from the different traditions. But that's what makes a strong melody. And then if a composer gets his or her hands on it, they might tweak something, change the ending, or add a new line, and then that's the version that is sung for the next song, and then the next generation has a new version, blah blah blah, and it goes like that. But yeah, it's an interesting one. So we'll have a look now at the next one because this is another version. So this is Kuru Kuru. This is probably there are a selection of kind of traditional Irish carols, and this is one of them. So just want to make sure that I definitely get the right melody here. So this one, might just listen to a version just to get on my ear just for sure, because this is very close to a similar one. So give me a second. And we're going to talk a little bit about the meaning of it. So here we go. This is one of the versions. Can you guys hear that?
Full many a bird that wake and fly, Guru, Guru, Guru. Full many a bird that wake and fly, to the manger's bed with a wandering cry. On Christmas Day in the morning, Guru, 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 Guru.
All right, so that's one version of it. There's a little bit of a difference in the version. And what I was going to mention in the previous song, sometimes when we breathe or when we stop, when we take a little pause, it's up to the singer, and it can really affect the phrasing. So, for instance, this one is, full many a bird did wake and fly, Kuru, Kuru, Kuru. Full many a bird did wake and fly, to the manger bed with a wandering cry. On Christmas Day in the morning, Kuru, 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 Kuru. So you notice that I didn't hold on the phrases as long. I think it moves better that way. I think when you stop and you let a phrase die too much, it loses the energy. So just a little breath and move on. Let's do that again, line by line. Notice there's a lot of repetition in this. So for instance, this line, full many a bird did wake and fly, Kuru, Kuru, Kuru. Full many a bird did wake and fly is the exact repeat of the first one. So it's like A, B, A. Then we've got C. To the manger bed with a wandering cry. D. And Christmas bell in the morning. And then you got C again. Kuru, 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 Kuru. And then kind of like a D, but a variation. Da, 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 da. Okay, so let's break it down again. I don't know if that, for me, in terms of structure, A, B, A, C, D, C, D. Kind of, that's how I think of it. But again, it doesn't really matter as long as you're going to remember it. So let's go for it. Full many a bird did wake and fly. Again, full many a bird did wake and fly. Full many a bird did wake and fly. Full many a bird did wake and fly. Then it goes, Kuru, Kuru, So I'll just go down the octave, just making sure that's the right key. Let's do the first two lines. Full many a bird did wake and fly. Coo-roo, coo-roo, coo-roo. Let's do that again. Full many a bird did wake and fly. Coo-roo, coo-roo, coo-roo. Last time, go. Full many a bird did wake and fly. Coo-roo, coo-roo, coo-roo. Next line. Full many a bird did wake and fly. Exactly the same as the first line. And then it changes. To the manger bed with a wandering cry. Again. To the manger bed with a wandering cry. Last time. To the manger bed with a wandering cry. Then it goes on Christmas Day in the morning, and it climbs the first time. So that's the most sort of odd bit. To the manger bed with a wandering cry on Christmas Day in the morning. Last time. To the manger bed with a wandering cry on Christmas Day in the morning. Then it repeats. Coo-roo, coo-roo, coo-roo. Coo-roo, coo-roo, coo-roo. And then it descends on that time. Let's do it all, the first verse, twice. 1, 2, 3, breathe. Full many a bird did wake and fly. Coo-roo, coo-roo, coo-roo. Full many a bird did wake and fly. To the manger bed with a wandering cry on Christmas Day in the morning. Coo-roo, coo-roo, coo-roo. Coo-roo, coo-roo, coo-roo. Second verse. The lark, the dove, the redbird came. Coo-roo, coo-roo, coo-roo. The lark, the dove, the redbird came, and they did sing in sweet Jesus' name on Christmas Day in the morning. Coo-roo, coo-roo, coo-roo. Coo-roo, coo-roo, coo-roo. And I always think you can really put in your accent. For some reason, I'm hearing a big dirty Dublin accent. Caril, Caril, Caril. Or you can go a northern accent like me. Caril, Caril, Caril. Up to you, whatever you want. Let's go for the owl. The owl was there with eyes so wide. Caril, Caril, Caril. The owl was there with eyes so wide, and he did sit at sweet Mary's side on Christmas Day in the morning. Coo-roo, coo-roo, coo-roo. Coo-roo, coo-roo, coo-roo. Last verse. The shepherds knelt upon the hay. Coo-roo, coo-roo, coo-roo. The shepherds knelt upon the hay, and angels sang the night away on Christmas Day in the morning. Coo-roo, coo-roo, coo-roo. Coo-roo, coo-roo, coo-roo. So there's loads of scope for maybe playing around with the ornamentation. We're going to do loads more ornamentation in other songs that we're doing. But for instance, if you wanted to throw in coo-roo, 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 you know, do a little ornament as you're falling. Ooh, ooh, play around with that. It is very simple melody, and that's, I suppose, one of the reasons why it's a beautiful song, and it's very simple. So this one, traditional Irish carol, it weaves folk imagery with Christian imagery, like many of the most popular songs, as we've spoken about. Often carols were rewritten folk songs. Animals introduced in this song through the nativity scene. So we've got the lark, the dove, the red bird, the robin, the owl, and then we've got the manger, Mary, shepherds, and the angels. So each of these animals, the lark, the dove, the red bird, the robin, and the owl, they all have their own symbolism. And there's such a big sort of background and backdrop of each animal, each creature, each flower, each tree. They all have like hundreds of years of imagery and of symbolism. So I'll leave that for you guys to explore. What does the lark mean? What does the dove mean? We have an idea of what the dove, we think the lark is like singing, melodic. The dove, the peaceful, the red bird, the robin, and then the owl is like wisdom. So each of them, even at face value, when we think of it, it conjures something. But if we look beyond that, then we get more out of the song. Kind of like what you were saying, Paul, at the beginning. If you understand a little bit more of the layers, then you get more out of the story. So I'll leave that to you to have a look at. You got some YouTube videos. The Clancy Brothers, again, a beautiful version from 1969. And then Maggie sounds on that version that we just heard. It's a different one. Two contrasting versions to have a listen to anyway. So, in these songs, winter is celebrated through the symbolism and the imagery of the birds, these winter birds. For centuries, the wren has appeared as a character in the winter rituals across Ireland, and we've explored a little bit about where that mythology comes from. So, whether Christian or pagan, the winter birds tell the story of the season. And interestingly, the gods that we celebrate often die after, hundreds of years or millennium. But the plants and animals, they go way back. So they're almost universal. They're these kind of natural characters. And that's why often we have these birds and the plants and the trees. They become as powerful, as supernatural. So it's not just about Jesus, but winter is a much, much older festival. It's a much older experience, a human experience. But of course, these songs explore different elements of that. So your assignment, if you choose to accept it, is to sing both these songs. What you can do is send me a recording. I won't share this with anyone, but I will give you feedback on it if you want a little bit of feedback. I also I find that the recording gives you a little bit of a deadline. It forces you to get it on your voice. And it doesn't mean you have to memorize it, but getting it on your voice just activates you in a way that hopefully will enhance the learning process. So give it a go, maybe one or two verses of each song, just to feel how it feels. And you'd be surprised how much singing it and recording it gets it into your body, and it becomes a lot easier the more you do that. So,
Donal, can I ask one question?
Absolutely. Cecilia.
Which of those two links for the Carew Carew song is closest to the one you did, or are they both the same?
I'd say go with the Clancy Brothers one. Just
Okay.
I think it's nicer texture. I think it's a nicer one, but and I
It was
also
just there was one line where I'm still dodgy on the melody.
the
So
structure is as in how I do the phrases is closer to the Clancy Brothers one. I don't do the long da 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 da. I think that's too long. It's like an extra bar, but you don't need it. I think it's nice to move on.
perfect. Thank you.
So, any other questions after tonight? Cool. I really encourage you to try those warm-ups. Don't just do them when you're singing. Do them every morning. It's kind of silly to